Welcome to another episode in Conversations in the Future of Work. I'm your host, Rachel Cossar. Thrilled to be here as always. And in today's episode, I'm really excited to put presence and sales front and center and understand some of the different ways that people are communicating or miscommunicating within that context. And so I'm very excited to welcome a very good friend of mine in this space. Amy, over to you.
Hi, Rachel. Hello, everyone. I am so honored to be here. My name is Amy Reczek, and I run Sales and Presence, a company that up-levels your communication techniques to have success overall. So thank you for having me.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Amy, for joining us. So I think we can get right into the first question here. I think it's really interesting to hear different coaches and facilitators' perspectives in terms of like some of the main misconceptions you find people have related to communication and presence.
Oh, goodness. One of the misconceptions I would say would be their awareness around it. I think most people think they have awareness around it, and they're highly lacking the awareness. And one of the big reasons why is because we're not taught some of those awareness things. If we think of communication, we're always thinking speaking. And then I think if we advance that into a listening skill, which is communication, back in the day when I was learning things, I was learning to be quiet. I was told, be quiet, don't speak, not learn how to listen, just be quiet. And so I think we are skewed in some of that, just in the awareness around what goes into communication when we actually are doing that.
Yeah, interesting. There's a few things that makes me think of, especially with presence work. I think people sometimes confuse this concept of presence, which is very much, at the very least, a two-way street, sometimes multiple, four-way stop with the different vantage points that are participating in any dialogue, with something that's more like charismatic, right? Like a charismatic leader who just commands an audience and everyone's paying attention to them. Like that's actually very different from developing this ability to communicate and listen and build a conversation that has active parts. Is that something that kind of you see too?
100% agree. And they're both very different. They're also both learned. So I think, back to, I think the awareness of, oh, that person just has that is inaccurate. They hone in on that and they work on all of those different things that we don't even realize they're doing consistently. And the same with a group setting or a one-to-one where you're actively listening or you're actively being engaged or you're actively staying present. It's a very difficult thing to even stay present today on meetings or when you're talking to people on one-to-one. So it's an active engagement that doesn't get enough attention.
Right, absolutely. And the other thing you said that earlier, the earlier part of your answer to this question, we see a lot at Virtual Sapiens. Like we'll actually do demos with people and they'll see the tool in action and they'll be like, oh my God, this is great. I know so many people who could use this.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, what about you?
What about
And
you?
they're like, it's like, oh no, I mean, whatever.
Yes.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
So, but that's a challenge. That's a real challenge when you're then trying to sell this training.
Yeah. And it's emotionally tied, I would say, right? It's, oh my gosh, I do that. I don't do that. Or, that makes me uncomfortable. Why I don't want to react to that. I think it's a very emotionally charged center that sometimes happens with that. We have to get uncomfortable to grow in anything that we do. And so really being able to actively sit in that uncomfortable and analyze that. I know you do this. I do. I was just watching a training of mine back yesterday, and I was one of the things I do is I just turn off the sound, and I'm watching what I do and how I'm reacting and what my face says and where my hands are and all of the things. And there's always something where I'm like, well, that was about misaligned, and I can work on that or I can upskill that. So it's a continual thing. It's never oh, I have it now, it's done. Similar to verbiage and how we're communicating speaking wise as well. But I think it's definitely an ongoing, and it's something that we can take little by little to get more comfortable with it. But I do think in that beginning, if you're like, oh great, I know 10 people who need this.
Yeah.
I'm wonderful. it always saying, well, hold on, we can always 1% it up. And so what can you do if you think you're great at it now? What are those things that may be holes in that still?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Can you actually say more about, because I haven't, I used to do this a lot. I haven't done it in a while, but watching a presentation or some kind of recording muted, like what,
Mhm.
can you say more about that as a technique for learning more about some of maybe your nonverbals?
Yes. So it's such a powerful tool to do, because we always go back to hearing ourselves, or to what we're saying, or to listening to others, actively listening within speaking. And so if we turn the sound off, there's two things there. If you do have other people in the room, you are witnessing their reactions as well. That's another thing that you could be doing, but really focusing on how are you communicating without saying a word. What is that transparency that's coming through? Maybe you've had an off day or you didn't sleep at all the night before, and now you're recognizing with no sound that that's coming through very apparently, that you're just tired, you look tired, your energy's off, those type of things. If you're slouching a lot, what are those things that are coming up for you? The flip side of that is also true. Keep the sound on and turn the camera off and listen to how you're speaking. So you can, I would say do both. Definitely do both. There's different aspects and ways of speaking, especially if you're presenting. I know that I'm a little bit more, or I'm very fluid when I'm presenting. When I'm in things like this, it's more off the cuff and thinking live, and so it's more casual.
Mm,
So I will place myself, am I too casual in a presentation? I need to up level that within my speaking. So you can do both. I would definitely do both. And most people are recording these days, so you have it.
right.
Use it to your advantage. Yes.
That's such a good, like, concrete takeaway. So I hope people really take note of that. It's such an unusual way. Like, it's already hard enough to watch yourself on a recording, but to have a more focused approach to, like, okay, what am I actually looking for here? Because there's a lot that's going on, and it can be hard to, like, one thing that AI does really well is it can analyze hundreds of behaviors at the same time, but that's not really how we, like, our brains might be processing a lot of information, but then to analyze each piece and understand what's going on with what takes a more focused approach. So that's such a great reminder.
Mhm. It's also great too, I would say, test it out when you are not the center of the room too. So if
Mm,
you do have a recording of you being in a meeting, but maybe you're not running the meeting, you're attending, watch that back and see what you're doing as you're attending. I guarantee if you have something like this close to you,
yeah,
that popping up, that you're looking down, all of a sudden you're checking your phone, and you're not even, the awareness again is not there of all the distractions that are happening for
mm,
you to not be present.
totally, absolutely. Along the same lines, and evolving the question a little bit, I find one of the things that does come up. So you mentioned earlier that giving feedback on presence and communication can be a very personal thing, right? And we develop these habits of communication in a specific way, and then it starts to feel like that's our authentic way of
Mhm.
communicating, right? And I know, Amy, you and I talked about this last time we met in person, but, like, how do you encourage clients to develop habits that maybe feel new or awkward or not like themselves while staying authentic?
Mhm. The first thing I say is if it feels uncomfortable or if it feels inauthentic to you, throw it out. We all know what inauthentic feels like. Throw it out if it's completely inauthentic. Now, if it's just uncomfortable,
Hmm.
that's where I would love for you to sit. Get uncomfortable with it and do it in a safe space. So if we're talking about business as a whole and we're trying to uplevel our communication through business, I would say don't start there. Start in a safe space. Start with your friends, start with your family.
Hmm.
Really start practicing these things where it doesn't matter how it ends up and you can be completely awkward and uncomfortable in your own safe space. And then start working that a little bit towards business. The other thing with habit is that we can recognize what some of them are. So starting with what are some things that you naturally do that are okay or neutral, or are things that are lessening your credibility in spaces. One of the things, I'll give you an example that I do that's a habit, very weird, but it's something that's genetic. My grandmother did it, my mom did it, is that I hold my thumb in
Uh-huh.
between. Right? This to me would be a neutral. This isn't something that's taking away from anything,
Mm.
something that I naturally do. However, if something was a habit of mine, if I get a little nervous and I start wringing my hands and they start becoming different colored, that's something that could take away and detract my worth
Yeah.
and value that people could see. So that's something I want to change and be aware of. So I would say with habit, we have to start with our baseline of okay, what are some of those things that we do? I had um, a gal that I was working with a couple months ago, and she said, you know what I finally did? I finally took, I don't wear earrings anymore or
Mhm.
rings into a room because I cannot stop fidgeting with them,
Yeah.
right? She plays with them and plays with them,
Yeah.
but such great awareness
Mm.
around, ooh, I need to shift this habit. And so all she did was move the problem out of the way.
Right.
So sometimes it's that easy.
Right.
Another simple way to do that, if I'm presenting on stage, my hair will always be up. Why?
Mhm.
Because it always ends up falling in my face and then
Yeah.
I'm messing with it. So I'm
Right.
like, I got to move it just completely out of the way. So it
Yes.
could be as simple of that as that to really start that habit progression.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And having that recording to review that,
Yeah.
or using a platform like Virtual Sapiens, right?
Mhm.
Shameless plug, to reflect some of those behaviors back can be really
Yes.
helpful because it is, you're wrapped up in a conversation, you're presenting, you're thinking about your content or whatever, and then you're going to forget that you're doing something, right? And so having the reflective opportunity can be really
Yes.
helpful in just identifying, because you just rattled off a number of examples for people, which I'm sure a lot of people in the audience will be like, oh, actually, you know what, I wonder if I do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
um,
will add one more to that. You had me thinking about, so if you are doing a presentation, I would say have that so down that you can move that any way, any format. You could rattle it off in your sleep and it's completely fine. Because then that gives you the ability to say, okay, I have this so locked in. Now I can really look at my presence and what's going on there. If I am in a room, where do I want to move to? How do I
mhm,
want to walk?
mhm,
Those are the things, that level up that we can start working on that are so powerful, that get completely away from the content and into how you are actually showing up. um, powerful things, but we need to have that core down first. I think that's where that miscues a lot, is that we're still so focused on the agenda, or we're focused on what we're going to say and how we're going to say it.
yeah.
To the point, if we have someone in the other room, or in the room, that derails that a bit, then all of a sudden it's a struggle for us. So we want to make sure that that's so locked in that it doesn't matter which way it goes. We've got that covered, and then we can really show up with things.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of my time as a dancer, because there's like the choreography. You just have to learn the choreography. I remember,
Hmm.
like, if we were learning a new piece, we would spend like a week just learning the choreography and the steps, and you would just be learning material and
Mm.
dancing it like horribly.
Yeah. Yes.
But you just
Yes.
have to get the steps, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to get
Yep.
those
Do the
words, you have
steps.
to know, like, this comes after this, and, "Oh, I have this, like, sticky spot in my mind, and, okay, so let's go over that part, la, 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 la." And then once you have the choreography under your belt, and you don't have to, literally, it's critical what you said, Amy, like, almost not even have to think about it,
Yeah.
then you start adding those elements of quality, and
Mm.
intentionally deciding how you want to show up and deliver
Yep.
those words.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on this a little bit, or at least I did. How do you see technology amplifying and kind of interacting and intersecting with your work?
It is a wonderful support system. So it levels things up completely. I actually just said the other day, how did I get through my entire career and up to this point without chat? It's such a level up. So it's not ever going to completely take the place of things. We all still have to have that human connection, and we have to really recognize that.
Mhm.
If I threw something in chat today and then word for word dumped it into an email, that would not work. It would not come through authentic. But it does spin it in a way to like, oh, I just leveled that up in a way that my brain did not do naturally, and now I can put that in and really reference that in that human connection and
Yeah.
reference it back to what's important to them. And I think it's a support. It's like anything else that we are using technology wise. If you are in business or in sales directly, you use a CRM system. That's a lifeline for salespeople. this is the same type of concept. So we're bringing in this really exciting new technology in a way to, again, support and expand how we communicate. If we look at it that way, I know that sometimes companies are like, nope, we don't, we can't, I don't know about that.
Mm,
Um, it is a tool for advancement. It is a tool to help with that communication. We're seeing this time and time again in this virtual world now, in this such fast-paced world, that human connection is so fleeting, but it's also vital. It's
mhm,
not going anywhere. That's how humans are designed. We've talked about that. We know that. So how do we then level that up to make sure that the time that we do have with them matters, and
right.
how we're bringing ourselves to the table? Yeah, I think it's vital.
Right. Yeah, those are really great points. I think the way we think about it, because like virtual sapiens is interesting because it's like built by coaches to be
Mhm.
used by coaches and facilitators. And um, like we've sat with this, this notion of like, what does the AI like do better
Mhm.
than humans, right? And it's like those repetitive tasks that would be great if we could scale, or that would be great if we could empower the user to be able to do more of that on their own in their own time, because we know that as facilitators and coaches, like you want to have that thread that connects from one session to another, right? You want to
Mhm.
know that like people are practicing, and that, in an ideal world, they're still getting some encouragement along the way that's in
Mhm.
line with what you would be coaching and teaching them.
Yep.
And then you get the benefit of being able to see the progress and comment on it. And those things now with technology actually for the first time are really possible at any kind of scale,
Mhm. Yeah.
when they wouldn't be without the technology. As nice as it would be, right, for
Right.
one of your clients, maybe Amy, to have you on every call being like,
Right.
oh, you did it again. Like it's
Right.
just not feasible, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's so easy, and it's on their timeline, and then we can have some back end and engagement and lifting it where we need to lift it. But it's also to your point, the follow through is vital. I So many trainings I've been on where we'll cover things in communication or presence. They're like, okay, got it, and then we'll come back a week later. I'm like, who did what? And nobody did anything.
Right.
So it's so
Right.
easy to go fall back into what's comfortable, right?
Oh
And so
man.
to really have that to where it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I know how to practice this, or I saw it and I got all this engagement back, and now I know. It levels everything up,
Totally.
including the end result for everyone involved who's trying to, sorry,
No,
dog,
no problem.
who's trying to really think of things in a different way
Yeah.
in how they communicate. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. So let's switch gears a little bit, because I'd love to hear more from the entrepreneurial side of your business, right? Like
Hmm.
what are some of the biggest challenges that either you faced recently or currently that you're facing?
Hmm. So some of the things that I'm really, I think that are challenges right now are thinking around how we can bring the communication piece within presence into mainstream business. Uh, some of these entities have been around for a long, long time. Programs have been around for a long, long time. So if we're thinking of how to bring in training or how to bring in things to up level teams,
Hmm.
it goes back a lot to things that are tangible in the past. So hard skills type of training, or some sort of methodology within that. What stats and analytics are showing is that the most important actually right now are those soft skills or power skills within that environment. Um,
Hmm.
how do you get teams to engage on that? How do you have that analytics behind it, which is what's beautiful about the program? How do we offset that so we know that it's valuable? I think that piece is coming. It's coming quicker, but it's one of those things that I find as a solopreneur to try to get companies to engage in that.
Yeah.
Um, some are really on board and ready for it, and some are, it's that learned behavior that we're changing of, it's moving into this timeline
How do you get the question around like specific ROI for training like
now.
this? And how do you answer that question?
So my thought on that, and I've thought this forever, especially being in sales, is if you have some sort of training company that promises an ROI, that's a hard thing to promise, because it's an end result of the person that's your staff.
Yeah.
I am not able to do that, to promise an ROI for you. What I can promise is movement. So if we, those analytics behind all the movement is what we're going to show. So if we have someone who has a real struggle with follow-up or with a cadence, let's say, for prospecting, let's put that into play. That's the easy part. That's that hard skill part over there. But then let's figure out the how within it. How are we doing that to connect and engage? That's where we're going to see that lift of connection and communication. Definitely the close rate will go up, but that ROI part is tricky, right? It's a tough one, and I don't promise that due to the fact that there's so many elements out of a consultant and coach's realm.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, that I can't control. So
Yeah.
if it was a one-to-one, I could do that, but
For sure. Yeah.
within a business, that's tough. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. No, I completely agree. We get that question all the time, and we don't have like closed deal increase percentages that we can like quote consistently and then promise, right? There are companies that do that, and I'm always like, do people believe you? Like, how are you doing this?
Yep, I know. I'm with you. I'm like, how? Tell me
Oh my
how. I
God.
want to know that how. Yes, I want to know that how.
Totally.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I'm with you.
In the contract line, it says, we're not guaranteeing any ROI. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's a tough one. But I would say for companies out there that are like, but we need that. We need to know what that ROI is going to be. I would say that the guarantee from this side of things is the feedback you're going to get. So we can track that, right? So as soon as we start doing a 6-month program with you, we will be doing surveys and analytics around what is the engagement with your team? How are they engaging? What are they doing differently? That's going to show you that movement that you want. It's not a dollar ROI, but it's definitely an ROI. You are engaging your team at a higher level than most companies out there. And that's what you want. That's what you want. If you get them to that 1%, that ROI is going to come.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's a great answer, and a great way also to just deal with that, like the inevitable pushback that you might get when, when you answer honestly, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I feel like we could keep going, but thank you so much for sharing such concrete takeaways with our listeners. What's the best way if people want to follow your work or get in touch? Where should they do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I also have a LinkedIn newsletter that goes out that you can attach to, which is great. Or my website, salesandpresence.com. Happy to connect with you. There's a connect button there, and we can connect and meet up. Happy to do that.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again, Amy. And of course, as always, thank you to our listeners for coming back for more. We'll see you next time.